Alright guys, so I have gotten permission to use this video from the creator of it, and I think it's fairly important that y'all hear it. This is where we are currently at with this standings with Trump and this so-called chlorine attack over in Syria. Okay? I'm going to let him explain it instead of explaining it myself. I believe he can do a better job of it. Man's been doing it for a long time, so I'll just give it to you straight from the horse's mouth. Here it is.
Actually had it recorded as well. We have some very serious things going on right now, friends, and I know many of you have already been watching this chemical attack that has happened inside of Syria. Here on the screen and behind me I have where President Donald Trump says many dead, including women, children, and mindless chemical attack in Syria. Area of atrocity is in lockdown and encircled by Syrian army, making it completely inaccessible to the outside world. President Putin, Russia, and Iran are responsible for backing Animal Assad. Big price, the president has said. Now, as we speak, the Joint Chiefs are already meeting. They're getting ready to take down, are giving the options, I should say, but obviously it will be to take out Damascus. We know that President Trump said before, if chemical weapons were ever used again, they would definitely be using or taking out Damascus. Russia has warned that if the U.S. strikes Damascus, they would retaliate against any ship or any other place where these missiles.
I do also want to state this is fair use because I will probably be doing commentary as well, so it should cover me there also.
May be launched from. Now,
this is also why I have created the video earlier that I did, why I'm saying it's such a dire situation right now, why things are important like this. You have to remember back when Trump threw the Tomahawk missiles at the, I think it was a bunker or something, I don't remember, when he was in the meeting with China, when they did that last fake attack. The one where the workers that were washing the children and stuff off, they weren't even wearing suits. And if that was in fact a real, I believe it was sarin gas that was supposedly used. Anyhow, if it would have been real sarin gas, the people that were rushing to render aid, quote, to the people, then they themselves not only would have gotten sick, but they would have died also, okay? So, what I'm getting at is any moron could have figured out that it was fake, that it wasn't a real sarin gas attack, and Trump decided to instead lob a bunch of tomahawks at them while they were in the meeting with China. Now, I think, personally, Trump probably knew. He probably knew it was fake, and he said, well, I've got China in here, let me flex my muscles a little bit right here in front of them, and, you know, gives you a good, in the geopolitical spectrum, it would give you a good impression as far as being strong, not being weak and timid and shit. That's why, one of the reasons why they didn't like Obama. They thought he was weak. They thought he was timid. He was a girly boy, you know. And we don't even have to get into that because some people think he is kind of limp-wristed, so to speak. Anyhow, I'm going to shut the hell up and let y'all hear what this intelligent man has to say.
I'm going to be looking at this also from a biblical perspective. So those of you that are watching that appreciate the news on this, keep in mind we are going to be looking at this from a biblical perspective as well. I think it's very important that we do so. But we're going to get into a lot of the news application regarding how these things have been building up now over time. I want to share with you some thoughts that I have there. But one thing in particular that comes to mind, especially in light of the fact that when the situation last year, in fact, almost to the date, in fact, Khan Sheikhoun, when the chemical attack happened there that was blamed on the Syrian government, President Trump launched the Tomahawk cruise missiles against the Syrian air base there, and it, of course, was from the sea. And even now, the U.S., the strike, if they do carry out a strike, if the President Trump does make that move to carry out the strike, it will no doubt begin from the Mediterranean Sea. It will come from the Persian Gulf, the planes, the cruise missiles, whatever they're going to use. And of course, as the military advisors have said before, they would have to take out Russia's cruise missile, or excuse me, S-400s, S-300. All the air defenses would have to be taken out in order to take down Damascus. I think Russia is well aware of that, and they know that the U.S. will do, with the NATO allies, will do an overwhelming response. Well, it kind of reminds me of the prophecy over here in Jeremiah, I believe it's chapter 49, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, Damascus, Hamath is ashamed, and Arpad, which Hamath, by the way, happens to be Hama in Hama, Syria, and Arpad happens to be near the city of Aleppo. It says, for they have heard evil tidings. They are melted away. There is trouble in the sea, and it cannot be quiet. Damascus is waxed feeble. She turneth herself to flee, and tremble hath seized on her. Anguish and pains have taken hold of her as a woman in travail. That's exactly what it looks like we're about to face, friends, and it's very troubling indeed what we're seeing. Now, I want to back up just a little bit. I really need to share with you guys some things that have been going on now for a while. Now, this is from the online journal Strategic Culture. The article came out last month on the 20th. U.S. planning a terrorist false flag chemical attack to justify bombing Syria. Russia says it will respond. Now, Sputnik News had reported that
That is what Mark was talking about when he was saying that Russia had put out the information saying that they were going to do the FF attack. I know we're not saying the other word, trying to not get flagged, what have you. Anyhow.
Jihadists that were inside of Eastern Ghouta had a tremendous amount of chlorine gas. And in fact, today I was listening to a interview with Vanessa Beeley, who is a journalist that is actually in Syria right now. We know Vanessa. We've been in contact with her many times before. And she was stating that they have, since they have liberated East Ghouta, they have found more and more chlorine gas stockpiles there. So they know that the chlorine gas has been very much readily available for them to use. And, of course, the thing that has troubled me from the beginning is when the State Department was announcing about a month ago, and we reported about this, keep an eye on Eastern Ghouta. And they said to the journalists, even watch the white helmets. They wanted journalists to put a spotlight, as it was actually called, a spotlight on Eastern Ghouta. From the very moment that this came out, I could not help but believe we were going to deal with a false flag attack. And we already know that the White Helmets have won their Academy Award for, Best Documentary. Last Man Standing, I believe, was the name of the documentary. And, of course, the State Department refers to it. And they even say, we're breaking the rules by telling you this. Well, it just seemed too obvious that they wanted all the journalists to put a spotlight on Eastern Ghouta. So we began to put that spotlight ourselves. We went back, we shared with you guys all the different proofs. Not Russians, not the Syrian proof. We're talking about independent, not just journalists, but as well Aaron Erdem from Aaron Erdem. Of course, you guys know Aaron Erdem is a former MP member. I believe he still is, parliament member in Turkey, who came out and accused Erdogan, of all people as well, when he was prime minister, of allowing the ISIS militants to come through their country, smuggling sarin gas at about the time that attack happened against the Syrian government back, what was it, 2013, I believe that was? All right, well, this happened, and sadly enough, as Aaron Erdem pointed out in the parliament, he said the blood of these children are on our hands because our government was complicit in doing it. He stood there. I shared with you guys the video from Aaron Erdem, the parliament member from Turkey. And then we had, there was one journalist, I believe she was an American journalist. She ended up dying mysteriously. She was fearful of her life. She was in Turkey, and she was the one that actually uncovered the rat line where the CIA was working with Erdogan to smuggle that sarin gas from Libya. Of course, Seymour Hersh picked up the story on that. I shared all that documentation with you guys. I'll try to put some of the links to those videos in here because it's very troubling to me what I'm watching here. All right, and we're going to go into this from a biblical aspect because I saw something today that's troubled me even more so that I think is important I share with you guys. All right, now, Russian Foreign Minister. It is necessary to warn once again that military intervention under far-fetched and fabricated pretext in Syria, where the Russian servicemen are deployed at the request of the legitimate government, is absolutely unacceptable and might lead to very severe consequences. You know, friends, nobody is going to come out of this good. I mean, we need to face the facts. Russia won't fare out of this very well either. Our U.S. servicemen that are deployed, 2,000 of them are deployed inside of Syria. It'll put our U.S. servicemen at risk as well. And I'm going to be getting into a lot of these issues here because one thing I've really been watching is that deployment of troops like I've never seen before. Now, also, this is where we brought the title of the story out here. I-24 News, breaking Joint Chiefs of Staff prepare possible Syria attack options and target list to President Trump within hours, according to military officials. That's where I actually got that from, just so you guys are aware of it. And of course, this was one of the videos that we actually did ourselves just recently. U.S. Navy prepares to strike Syria over false flag chemical attack. I did several of these videos. This is from March the 17th, 2018. Even go back a month back. And some very interesting stories we brought out showing you this evidence that we're kind of highlighting now. But, as I said, let's back up just for a moment. President Trump, and I'm not here to slam on President Trump. I know there's a lot of people that follow this ministry that love President Trump. It's not here to slam on President Trump. I'm here to tell you the truth, guys. You guys know me already. I don't pull punches. I don't care if it's Russia, Syria, United States, whoever it is. I'm only here because I believe in truth. And that's what I'm trying to share with you guys, is what I feel like is absolutely the truth. If I'm wrong on it, I'll come and tell you, I'm sorry, I made a mistake on that, okay? But in the case where President Trump was talking about pulling the U.S. forces out of there, I watched this and I really kind of felt like, okay, that's kind of great. I love to see that happen. But I'm also thinking at the same time, wait a minute. We have all these things going on. U.S. forces in Syria building more outposts, pulling up lawn chairs. According to the article right here, this is on the New York Times. This just came out the other day. But it's not just this little tiny base you see pictured in behind you here. We have huge bases, and we've been following this. And the article goes in here on the New York Times how the U.S. is building bases for the long haul. This is not just some short scenario that we're planning on being there, but they keep showing you. Of course, that's a little outpost right there, but bases are popping up everywhere. Lorenzo, our friend on Already Happened there, he's an Italian journalist. He shares a lot of this information showing us that, right? Now, if we're building bases and President Trump says we're coming out, all right, I take it for what he says. All right, he says we're going to pull out. Well, that's a good thing. But then I also realized, I kept it in the back of my mind. Maybe I should have just went ahead and said what I was thinking. But I kept thinking, President Trump, he's saying that, but he also may be planning on using that to get the evangelical Christian community that has supported him in his presidency behind him for if indeed he has to do a military intervention. When I say that, what do I mean by that? In other words, look like you're the good guy, you're going to pull your troops out of there, but when you know altogether the jihadists, the Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, the Free Syrian Army, whoever we've been supporting over there to overthrow a legitimate government, we know that this is the case, and you know that they could very well be using chemical weapons, and probably it's an inside knowledge anyway that they're going to do a staged false flag attack to justify taking down Syria. You have to understand, we can say it's the deep state all day long, but who's part of the deep state? Why has President Trump fired so many people in his cabinet? Well, maybe they are part of the deep state. But the guy Bolton we have in right there right now, we know he wants to go to war with Iran. He wants to go to war with North Korea. And I certainly don't say North Korea or Iran is the good guys on the block either. You know, we know North Korea has threatened the United States, although I have stood there, you know, I think we could probably resolve this peacefully rather than just going over there and trying to blow him out of the water. But he does have nuclear weapons, and it is a threat. I understand that. But my point is, we're watching this situation that's been developing in Syria. We've had General Wesley Clark that tells us years before this ever happens that the Pentagon has already planned to take down certain nations. Syria was included. Yeah. President Trump, when he was running for president, tells us that Obama created ISIS. I mean, a man running for president that's become the president of the United States says Obama created ISIS. We already know that. Well, we knew that ourselves. Everybody was saying it, but now you got the guy willing to say it. All right. Then you have the situation that General Wesley Clark says we're going to take down these nations, starting with Iraq, then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, end up with Iran. So there's still a couple of nations you have to go, but they're not going to give up. There was a reason for these to be taken down. Now, is it part of the New World Order? I think it is. I really think it's a lot to do with the New World Order, a revived Babylonian Empire, and, you know, so the point is I'm trying to bring out what we're seeing, what's actually going on. Now, let's continue to look at what's been happening, though, even though President Trump said we were going to leave, right? Lorenzo brought out here, this was what we reported this to you guys about a week or so ago. U.S. unloads Liberty Pride Roro ship in Jordan. All right, and you can see the images there, unloading tanks and everything else. And they're headed to the Jordanian-Syrian border. Okay, all this equipment being unloaded. This was not the first time, but the second time that this has happened. Earlier, they've done it already. Remember when Obama sent all the camouflage, desert camo equipment to Germany, and everybody was wondering, why is he sending desert camo to Germany? Well, we watched it. And that equipment went from Germany to Poland, from Poland to Greece, from Greece onto a Roro ship, and where did it end up? One of those ships ended up in Lebanon and was unloaded there. The other one ended up down in Jordan, went down to the Suez, and came back up to the Gulf of Aqaba and was unloaded at the port there. Now a second ship has been unloaded there. Not to mention all the equipment we've already got there. So it's obvious that we're building up for something. All right, then you have this one here. Remember this one. We reported this to you guys as well. German troops from the encirclet to Jordan to start in July. That was last year. They said it would take 3 months to move all their military equipment out of the Incirlik Air Base and move it to the Jordanian Air Base to the south. And I've said to you guys all along, I believe that Erdogan staged the coup in order to be able to put a foothold inside of Syria. Now look at all the troops he's moved into there. Now I really believe, guys, I'm telling you, I believe with all my heart that this is it was a false flag coup. I believe that Erdogan has been working with NATO from the beginning to get his military troops inside of the country to be able to take from the northern side Damascus. And for that matter, I mean, Russia could be playing in on this as well. Who knows? Maybe Russia's just as much involved. You know, I don't know. We do know, as Dr. Steve Pigeon said when he was on here the other day, and it's something that was on my heart as well, and I shared that with you guys, that, you know, I believe that the Vatican wants to see Russia and the United States go at it to break nationalism. I only say this because I actually had the insider that Nukel and Fagan worked under this man who shared that with me long ago, that if the climate change didn't work, they were going to go for a war between Russia and the United States to help break the nationalist spirit so they could bring about a new world order. And Erdogan was, as he said to me, Erdogan...
And clearly, their climate change agenda, global warming rather, didn't work. It fell apart. We're not buying it. Most people aren't buying it.
was promised a great deal in a New World Order if he did the dirty work. Well, he's been doing the dirty work, all right. He's been willing to get the gas in there to kill children in Syria. And even Khan Shaykhun, if you guys remember, what did we say about Khan Shaykhun? Seymour Hersh showed. He showed how that they knew from the very beginning, the U.S. military knew from the beginning, because Russia had let them know, we got a target there in Khan Shaykhun. Two of the fighting factions are going to be meeting there. We're going to take this place out, and told the Americans which pilot it would be, which bomb they were going to use, which was very similar to a J-dam, which would have left a crater about 8 foot deep in the ground, not a little tiny little pothole that you might get a flat tire from. And then when certain people are reporting out there saying, we know who the pilot was, and we know his name, and making themselves look like some kind of great people, well, sure, they're insiders, all right? No doubt they knew. But they twisted around and made it look like it was Syria that did it, but it wasn't. And then we show you all that information, how the U.S. was training. And I hate to say it, I love my country, I hate to say it, we're training these jihadists on how to deal with chemical weapons in Syria? Oh, jeez. All right, so the Germans moved their stuff to the south. Why? Because Turkey can handle the north with no problem. They don't need Turkey in the north. So they're going to put the Germans to the south, right? Now, then we had this big issue here. What was it here? France, U.S., French, British forces beefing up presence in Mumbai, Kurdish commanders. You know, the Kurds don't care if Syria goes down. They don't care if Assad goes down. You know, but it's kind of strange because the Turks are wanting to genocide them, and the Russians do nothing about it, and neither does the U.S. But they put the French and British forces there supposedly to protect the Kurds. I think, again, it could be. Now, I could be wrong on this. Maybe the French really do care about the Kurds, and I'd appreciate that if they did. But what if the French are being deployed there as another force on the northern side to help in this battle to take down Bashar al-Assad? You got to remember, there was a British mandate and a French mandate as well. This is how this Middle East was carved up after the Ottoman Empire. So it's kind of interesting that these forces are all back in there again. All right. Then we also have here, remember, as I said, you think that Turkey's with Russia? What did Erdogan say? U.S. attack in Syria, positive, but not enough. That's when President Trump launched all those Tomahawk cruise missiles at Bashar al-Assad. Excuse me. Yes, Bashar al-Assad in Syria. So we know what side Erdogan is really on. Don't let nobody kid you about that. All right? Now, whoop, looks like somebody didn't want that article. It was showing that even the number of bases that we have in Syria is an enormous number of bases there. All right? Now, let's look at this from the biblical aspect. I really want to go back to this again in Isaiah. Chapter 17. So I just really ask you to bear with me on this. And I'm going to go a little bit slower because I'm very concerned that what could unfold, as we read just a moment ago, there is trouble on the sea and it cannot be quiet. Well, Isaiah speaks about Damascus being a ruinous heap. I've shared that with you guys many times before. The burden of Damascus, behold, Damascus is taken away from being a city, and it shall be a ruinous heap. The cities of Aurora are forsaken, they shall be for flocks, which shall lie down, and none shall make them afraid. The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Aram shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. You have to understand some key words in here, and we're going to look at that as we go along here. But first off, I want to show you verse 3. As I've said it many times before, the fortress also shall cease from Ephraim. Now, I personally believe, because under President Bashar al-Assad, the Christian community has always been protected in Syria. And we see him, he's always, even before these wars, he's always visiting the churches there, the Eastern churches, through his country. And even when Pope Francis had an opportunity to take Christians from Syria and refugees back to the Vatican, he changed his mind and took the Sunnis instead. You know, I'm not against you. I mean, if you're Muslim, I'm not against Muslims per se. This is not my point here. But my point is here this man is supposed to be a Christian, and he's supposed to try to help his own, but he throws them under the bus. And more Christians have died by the thousands in Syria because of this war. All right? So the fortress also shall cease from Ephraim. Why? Because Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua, actually had, according to Matthew chapter 4, I believe it is, won many of the Syrians over into the faith of Yeshua. Which why? Because at the destruction of the house of Israel, they were dispersed, and one of the one places that the children of the house of Israel went to first was Syria. And we know that Paul was on his road to Damascus to destroy the churches that believed, that the Christians there that were there, because why? They were Jewish believers living there. So the fortress, so when Assad is destroyed and we allow the U.S.-backed Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, Free Syrian Army, that are the ones that have beheaded the Christians to begin with their track record, their fortress is over. And they will die. All right? Not only will they die, the Syrians will as well. It's going to be an open field day. Okay, so we read on here, and the remnant of Aram, or the remnant of Syria, shall be as the glory of the children of Israel. Now that word there, the glory, is not necessarily in a positive light. In other words, they're going to go through the same thing that the children of Israel have gone through. All right, and I think it's not just gone through, but what I'm very concerned about is what you're about to see now, verse 4. I didn't really look at this deep enough, but it's really concerning to me. And it shall come to pass in that day, when Damascus falls, that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, and the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean.